Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So, as you know, Monday means it's a modern Monday here in the Instant Deck Tech land, and we have a super sweet aggro list to check out today. So if you're a fan of the Zoo archetype, there's a new Zoo-esque deck in Modern with a really sweet twist. This is Naya Landfall recently took Jesse Pillen to a second place finish at SCG Modern Regionals in Raleigh. So big congrats to Jesse on their finish with the deck. A quick reminder before we break down the deck. If you enjoy this deck and you want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So Naya Landfall is like Zoo, but with a really cool, super aggressive landfall package. So Step Links and Plated Geopede are kind of the two key cards. They're cards that are underpowered on their face. A 0-1 for 1, a 1-1 for 2. However, if you can make a land drop, or better yet, multiple land drops, like with the help of a fetch land, they get super big. If you play Step Links on turn 1, and then play and crack a fetch on turn 2, you're attacking for 4 damage. Plated Geopede, 5 damage with first strike if you go through that same sequence on turn 3. Wild Mikado and Narnum Renegade are kind of the backup 1-drops. Wild Mikado is just big. It's a 3/3 for 1 mana. It's just the most efficient 1-drop there is in Modern, because the stats are just so huge and it's so easy with fetch lands to find the right lands to get it fully powered. Narnum Renegade is a little odd, but it almost is a landfall creature in its own right. If you think of it as, if you crack a fetch land, this is a 2/3 with Death Touch. That's actually a pretty reasonable 1-drop as a backup. So we got a total of 14 1-drops, and then the fetch lands are kind of the most important thing in this deck. If you're just playing a normal land to pump up your Plated Geopedes and your Step Links, it's not really gonna be good enough. Attacking for 2 with Step Links or 3 with Plated Geopede just isn't what you want to be doing on turns 2 and turn 3. On the other hand, when you crack a fetch, those cards are really absurd, and they get even more absurd with a card we're about to talk about next. But the important thing here is the deck has a massive 13 fetch lands, so you should always have one. That's kind of the goal. Every land you play, you want to be a fetch land. You don't really just want to naturally be playing basics or shocks or anything like that. The thing that really pushes this deck over the top is Renegade Rallier. This is kind of the combo piece. So what this deck really wants to do, its nut draw, is to play a Step Links on turn 1. On turn 2, you play your Plated Geopede, maybe get in for 2 damage or 4 damage by making your land drop with your Step Links, so your opponent's like 16. On turn 3, you play a fetch land, crack a fetch land. That's going to boost your Step Links to a 4/5, your Plated Geopede to a 5/5. Then you cast a Renegade Rallier, get back the fetch land, that's another land drop, and then crack the fetch land, that's another land drop. You technically get 4 landfall triggers, which is going to push your Plated Geopede to 9 power, your Step Links to 8 power. You throw in the 2 damage or 4 damage you got with the Step Links on turn 2, and that's lethal on the spot, just curving out with those creatures. Plus, Renegade Rallier can get back your creatures if things go weird or go long. Knight of the Reliquary is kind of a slow backup Renegade Rallier, and this deck gets actually just worse than Renegade Rallier because it comes in with Summoning Sickness, but you can do the same trick. You play your land, crack your land, then this would be on turn 4 because of the Summoning Sickness problem, but then you can sack land a Reliquary, get another fetch land, crack that, you get the 4 landfall triggers, pump up your Geopedes and Step Linkses, and take over the game that way. The deck has a couple other creatures, and Tarmogoyf is kind of like Wild Mikado. It's just so big and efficient. If your plan is to beat down with creatures, it's really hard to keep it out of the deck. Thalia just slows down your opponent. This deck is playing very minimal spells, and it makes sure that on turn 3, your opponent isn't easily pathing your stuff. It's just kind of slowing them down. Natural hate against some of the spell-based combo decks in the format. So just another great inclusion in a deck that's really light on any non-creature spells. As far as non-creature spells, like I said, it's minimal. 4 lightning bolts, 4 pass, give you some removal, some reach in the late game. Seal of Fire might look odd, but it's actually super sweet because you can play it, shoot something for 2 damage, and then that's going to trigger your Renegade Rallier, get back the Seal of Fire from your graveyard, shoot down something else. Discounting the fetch lands, the rest of the mana base, you get a few shock lands that you can tutor up with the fetch lands, and some basic lands, and then there's a small package of tutorable lands. So if you want a creature land, Land, you can tutor up Treetop Village. This is with Knight of the Reliquary, of course. Horizon Canopy gives you some card advantage. A Ghost Quarter lets you fight against Tron a little bit. So hopefully you don't draw these, but you can tutor them up in the right situation with your Knight of the Reliquary. As far as the sideboard, we get a bunch more creatures for different situations. Forge Tender and Core Firewalker, great against red decks, great against burn spells, protects you from sweepers like Pyroclasm and Anger of the Gods. Grim Lavamancer, great in little creature mirrors, you just shoot down all your opponent's stuff. Qasali Pride Mage, Kitaki, give you some ways to fight against Affinity, other artifacts and enchantments. And remember, these are all on bodies. In this deck, since you want to be beating down, there's definitely an upside to having a Qasali Pride Mage over a Disenchant or a Ancient Grudge, for example, because you can actually beat down with a Pride Mage where you can't with the spells. Thalia for other spell-heavy decks, you can go up to the 4 copies. Stony Silence, Affinity, Rule of Law for Storm decks. We've seen Storm-style decks catching on, not just the SRAM Storm deck, but also the Brawl Storm deck, so it's becoming worth it again to play some of these cards in your sideboard. Chalice shuts down the SRAM deck. It's a little odd in this deck because you don't want to put it on 1 because your deck is stuffed with 1-drops, but Chalice on 0 is kind of game over against the SRAM deck, and then another Ghost Quarter for Tron. Last but not least, a Bonfire of the Damned can let you steal a game with the Miracle ability, wipe out a bunch of tokens, and that is Naya Landfall for Modern, and that's been our Instant Deck Tech for today. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon.